And I'm going to have to tell my web continue to do that to me. My apologies. Hello,
Hmm.
everyone. My name is David Reed. I am the host of Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. This is episode 414. I appreciate you being here with me. Robert Murray Duncan, who played Seth and Melburn Jackson, has returned. Mr. Duncan, sir, it is a pleasure to see you again. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Likewise, sir. It's great to see you and be in front of an appreciative group. It's wonderful.
What have you been up to since we last had our god Seth on?
Wow.
And for the
Yeah,
record,
yeah.
I would have both Seth and Melbourne Jackson under the image below, but I'm using new software now, and unfortunately, I ran out of characters. So you are best known for Seth, so that is what I'm going to be going with. So
It wouldn't it be great if one day we had both of us on at the same time?
I know, right?
We sort of do, but yeah. No, things are good. Yeah,
Good.
it's interesting things going on in the world, and I'm here in Los
Oh boy.
Angeles, and I was thinking when after Stargate, I was probably in Vancouver for about another year and a half or so, and then I went back to New York. And so when you said, what have you been doing since? You meant after
Oh,
since our last
definitely. Since our last interview,
interview.
yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was a teacher at the California Institute of the Arts for 10 years. I taught acting in the character animation department, and then I also taught acting and directing for the voiceover people in the there's another production animation department. So that took me into some interesting places, and also I was invited to go to Paramount or sorry, Warner Brothers recently to do a lecture because one of my students is now a director there. And then
Really?
before that, I did um, DreamWorks. I did a 3-day lecture there, which was wonderful. And what's funny is, when people are afraid of acting, so they're like, I was told, don't pull anybody out of the audience. And I'm like, no, 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 I brought 8 of my own students to demonstrate. And it's a beautiful theater, and nobody sat within the first 10 rows and- except for one
Why?
man, because they're afraid I'm going to pull them up on stage and ask them to do
Oh, I
things. And
see now. Okay.
yeah, and I never do that. So anyway, I had my students demonstrating. So there's one man though sitting in the second row, right in the center. And so I asked him, I said, "Sir, why are you so brave?" And he said, "Well, my name's John Stevenson. I directed Kung Fu Panda, and I might be doing some feature film directing. I was live action." I was like, "Oh, good, good, good." So that was cool. And actually, I set up a 2-day session for him over a weekend privately and then I had some actors memorize some lines so he could work with that. But it's a fantastic experience. A lot of wonderful things came out of Cal Arts and the type of work that's being done there.
How
But
d
yeah.
so is that how you fell into the voice acting experience? Is that what did it? Or was that like something parallel? Like I'm fixing a camera issue over here, so I apologize. My attention's
Yeah,
slightly divided while I'm finalizing this.
I can gab for days. So uh,
Now that's my man.
I haven't ever actually worked in live action. I mean, sorry, in voiceover.
Okay.
Well, that's not true. I was the live action reference for John Smith in the animated Pocahontas film. Um,
Yes.
they would film me, and they'd send me storyboards the night before, and I'd look at them, and then they'd film me acting the role out, and that would be like once a week, then twice a week, then nothing for 3 weeks, then 3 sessions. So it went on for 2 years. It was a great job, and at one point they said, we kind of want to do dialogue scratch test, which is just some audio, not the real actor, because Mel Gibson was doing the voice. So,
Yes.
and they said, well, we could get someone in one of our people in the office to do it, but if you'd like to do it, we'll pay you, a little this. And I said, oh, yeah, sure, let's do that. So, I did it, and I said, do you want me to sound like Mel? And they're like, no, 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 because I didn't quite realize how this worked. So what they did was they recorded. Mel was shooting Braveheart in England,
Okay.
and so they sent somebody with back then a cassette tape, and they said, "Here, Mel, do this." So they directed me very specifically, and then had Mel duplicate what I was doing. And sometime when the material came back and we're acting it out in the studio, it was weird. Sometimes I'm like, was that him or was that me? But yeah, it was a very, very cool experience.
Where in that situation? Actually, Robert, could you tilt a little bit down for me, please? The camera.
Hmm.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Is that
Where
good?
in that's that okay, very good. I appreciate that. Where I'm trying to figure out like how I would feel in that kind of a situation because it's like I'm creating a character and also artists are creating a character and that's totally cool. But now in this case, I've got another actor on the other side of me and I'm like of the other side of the character
Hmm.
coming in to make the character. That had to have been trippy because where does the character begin and end and of which performer is who's who's pulling the strings?
Yeah, yeah. They were very specific. Like I said, they were very specific in how they wanted me to do it, and he mimicked that directly.
Okay.
So you could say it was coming from the director, and
Okay.
I think sometimes they don't understand acting, so they'd rather just say, just copy this instead of trying to direct, because Mel was also sick. He was producing, he was acting, he had a cold or something. So I think they just wanted to get it done, and he did a great job. So, but to answer your question, I would never say me, but I certainly had an
Okay.
influence in it.
Man. Yeah, no, there are all kinds of in this craft there are all kinds of ways to make a character come to life. Is that
Right.
one of the more complicated ones that you've gone through or do you have another experience by any chance that you can relate where it's like this is one that I don't know where this person is coming from, but I'm going to pull them out of the ether somehow, and we're just going to find it.
That's a good question. I guess so. Every actor has their process, but
Mm-hmm.
I studied with Sanford Meisner in New York for 2 years, and he was brilliant. And his definition for acting is living truthfully in an imaginary circumstance. So sometimes people say, "Oh, you're an actor. You're probably a really good liar," and we're actually trying to be very truthful, but we're tweaking for whatever the circumstance is, which is opposite to what a lot of people think. So. The roles are only difficult when I realize I've been miscast, and
Oh
I
no,
can't.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give you one little experience. I auditioned. I was living in New York City. I auditioned for a classic play, Hedda Gabler, which was going to be done in another state. And they come into this area, and they grab the actors out of New York and they take them out. And it's a great job. I've done a bunch of those. They call them regionals. Well,
Oh,
when we did the audition, the actress and I were called in. We didn't know each other, and we just improvised it with our understanding of what it was. And it was a very seductive kind of flirtatious scene. We're sort of playing with each other, and we did a really nice job. And they said, "Can you guys go outside and just wait for a second?" And then they called us in and said, "We've never done this before, but we want to cast the two of you right now." And I was like, "Well, that was great. It was fantastic." So then we were flown up to Maine. We started rehearsals, and the director was very specific in what he wanted. He said, now take 10 steps that direction, pick up the cigar, turn to the left. And I knew I was absolutely in trouble at that point because maybe now with some experience, I can fake that. But most people understand that let the actor play with it for a moment. If you've cast the right actor, they're going to get what you want, especially when it comes to the more important things like the emotional quality, the understanding of the characterization, as opposed to where you're walking on the stage at that moment. Those things you save for later. Just let the actors play. They're going to do the work for you. So I think I was very well trained in the neighborhood playhouse, and it comes in handy. Quite a bit. With the Seth character, it seemed pretty straightforward. At one point, I wanted to smile more, like I've got you in my palm, but that was sort of retracted from me. I was there, like I got a little grimace in there, but no, the work was really great. The people were fun there.
well, let's. I I wanna peck at that a little bit more, that earlier nugget, and then come back around to our god Seth because the were you miscast or do you feel that the director was a crappy director who didn't let the actor find the character in the space?
Do
because
you mean
that's what
the
I'm hearing, and not in Seth, but I'm hearing in this character piece that you were talking about, where you were hired on the day.
yes? Um, well, I mean, I don't imagine he's listening, but
I'm sure he's a
it
lovely
was
man.
yeah, he was. It was their first production they were doing, and he had graduated, and he had done this play as his thesis production.
Okay.
So what I really learned later was he's got this whole thing in his head, and then he's trying to make me fit into that. That is not, in my opinion, a good way to direct at all, you know. And it just was not a good production. And I wasn't the only one that was, being sort of channeled in certain steps and whatnot. So no, it's not a good way to direct. I think everybody knows. And in film, it's really weird. Like sometimes they won't say anything to you. You'll just other than let's start you over here. We're going to pick you up and boom,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll cut to that. And it's like I believe when they cast, they realize that's the person they want. And that whatever you did in the audition is what they want you to keep in terms of characterization and whatnot. I did have another science fiction show, which will remain nameless, where the director was blowing me way out in some really rage and just, screaming and yelling, and I was in some serious prosthetics which made it even more difficult. And I was in a smoky chamber, you know, and there was a glass so that the camera could see in at me. And she's being very, very, very aggressive with pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And I did it. She asked me to do it. In theater, the director is God. And that's my background. So you want me to do that? It's your show. So then I knew it. I waited at home. Noon the next day, the phone rang. It was producer from LA saying, "Hey, Robert, what you did in your audition, that's kind of." I said, "No, I know." I said, "But I was directed, and I was sent in that direction very aggressively."
What
And
are
he
you
said, "I know."
calling me for?
Yeah. So I said, "I know." And he said, "Well, if ever that happens, just go to the first AD." I was like, the first AD was standing right there the whole time. So I learned, it's like, okay. But then, of course, what chaos is going to happen after that when the actor goes up and says, "Can you
Right.
tell the director they're wrong?" It was a really bad scenario.
No,
But I understand that person, because of that, didn't work in Vancouver for a while. So,
man.
I'm, just through no reason, I'm sort of the bad guy, but or
Jeez.
what in that case. So,
Yeah,
so there are different directors, and I've learned through that experience as well to really find the balance and to slow down and stop and maybe say, "Excuse me, can we have a conversation? Because I'm confused." You know.
man.
So,
Well,
yeah,
you are opening a door for me here because I hope that you'll take my hand and walk through it with me here because the uh, the number of times I've done this show, I've done over 400 episodes now, and I have never talked to an actor about the process in this manner before. Would you
mm,
mind continuing to do that with me because I have some more questions?
sure.
Okay,
So I'm in. Oh, so you start with the question. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
do, if that's okay.
Yeah,
So there has always been this in my experience, I've been on set 8, 9, 10 times at this in terms of like the number of days that I've been on the Stargate sets over the years and a couple of others professional sets. And there is very clearly a line where you don't tell the actor how to say a line.
right.
The actor has their marks. The actor needs to know where the camera is going to go. The actor has to have a certain amount of instruction so that they can stay in focus. But beyond that, you are allowed to build the character where you see fit. Otherwise, the people who are behind the scenes should really be in animation, to be perfectly honest, because then they
There
can
you
make the
go.
character do whatever they want.
Mm.
Where for you does that sacred line of the art break away where you are no longer being allowed to express and emote the character, but you have intrinsically become a puppet? And where do you think that is that would make sense in certain circumstances because the technique is so specific of what it is that they're trying to get that well in this case that makes sense. I have never heard an actor tell me that a producer called them and said, why did you make that choice? And they didn't go to the director and say that. Not to say, not, I'm not calling out this specific case, but
Yeah.
also I am, because that is such a unique situation from my perspective to put an actor in.
Mm. Yeah. So there's a whole diplomacy
Right.
in everything we do. And I personally, if someone wants to give me a line reading, I'm fine with it. But if it's every single one, then it gets like, well, okay, but whatever. But uh, I assume that like as they said, they liked what they saw in the audition, and that's what I'm ready to do. And I can
Mm-hmm.
go wherever they want, and I did because I was asked to. Yeah, it was a misinterpretation, I think, on their part to sort of slow down and know where that direction came from. And but I did listen to him. He started in the phone call. It took about 5 minutes for him to get to, I just want you to do what you did in the audition.
Oh
But I
boy.
listened. I wanted to interrupt him a lot of times. I just listened and I listened and I was diplomatic. And then all I said was, I was sent very strongly in that direction. And that's when he said, just go and talk to,
Right.
I could, my arms were covered to here. And I'm like, um, uh, it was easy to re-record the audio because you could barely see my mouth moving anyway. And then in the audio, I went back to what I did in the audition, which was the character. See, the character could kill people with his thoughts. So he doesn't need to raise his voice. He didn't scream. He doesn't need to scream. He doesn't scream to yell, need to yell. And so
I'd
we
be
went back
overdoing it.
to, yeah, but yeah.
Oh.
So we went back and I was fine. But he was on the line while we re-recorded every single line and
Oh,
fine,
okay.
that's it. But it's funny in the industry because sometimes the people with larger positions have a greater voice among other people in the industry. And,
Mm-hmm.
you can be excommunicated without even knowing what happened, So there's a lot of politics involved and all that kind of stuff.
And
But I just
there's
did what I was told.
Yeah, and all the more power to you. But also, there is I had Carrie McDowell on a couple of days ago,
Mm,
who was the post production supervisor on Stargate, all three shows, and now post production producer. And she said, "There's a reason we'll fix it in post exists as a phrase in the industry, because under some circumstances, there's no other optimal way to do it. I mean,
right,
sure, cringe when you largely when you hear that we'll fix it because we're abandoning this and we're just going to have to move forward. But
right.
in certain circumstances, it's an ass saver, because it's like there was nothing that, like, this was all printed, and it exists now, and ADR is a chance to redo some of that and salvage
Hmm.
what it was that you were trying to create.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so let's bounce to theater for a second again.
Mhm.
I understudied John Malkovich in the premiere production of Burn This here in Los Angeles. And then a couple of years later, I got asked to go and audition for production in San Diego. And I got the role. I didn't know at the time I was the only one auditioning because what happened was their actor that they had dropped out to go do a film. So I took over. The director didn't invite critics because I only had 7 days to learn their production, which is quick because my character just talks the whole time. And I'd been 4 years. I had to memorize the lines, and so it was a smash hit. A few critics did come, and he was kicking himself. He goes, "I should have invited the rest of them." But there was one line in the script. Now I had Lanford Wilson's original, not with me there, but that's what we were working from when I was understudying him. Lanford Wilson's in the room. Director Marshall Mason's in the room. The understudies are in the room. And so you're watching this whole process go through, which was great. So then I go into this show in San Diego, and there's a typo in the printed version because that's what I brought. That's what I bought. There's literally a typo, and it does not make sense. It's like squibbish. It's like, and so I knew the line from Lanford's original text, and I said it correctly. And the director goes, "Wait, wait, wait, wait,
Uh-oh.
wait." Yeah, the director goes, and he's a smart guy. He's a great director, but he goes, "Robert, wait a second. I think it's the word is squibbish, and that wasn't the word, but it was that ridiculous. Squibbish
I'm
actually
sorry,
makes
what
more
does that word
sense."
mean?
Exactly, exactly. And
It's
I
like
said,
Seinfeld with George. The card says moops. It's like, no, that's a misprint.
yeah.
I'm
So
sorry.
so he no, so he it took him about 4 days to let me change it. And I said, I didn't, I couldn't get to LA to get, I was like, but the word is the, you know. I said, trust me, it's a typo. And I could probably go through this thing and find it again. I remember it was the top right page somewhere. But but I also infused some of my own interpretations of that character in there, and again, it was the right thing to do. I learned a lot from watching Mr. Malkovich work. We do
Mm.
something different, but it both works, and he's obviously doing well with what he's doing. So yeah, it's an interesting process. It is a collaboration. I went and auditioned for somebody, and we had a rehearsal. The stage was raised, and there's the director and producers are sitting out in front of us. And the director keeps when I would sort of and we're standing or sitting with a book, whatever we wanted to do. By book, we mean script in hand. And
Hmm.
sometimes I'd get up and move, and the director would get up out of his seat and run over and go, and I'm like, we're just doing the first reading, and it's not a film. So anyway, then I'd walk over there, and he'd run over and go, and at the break, he said, Robert, when you say that second line, can you like? And I thought this isn't going to go well, that I actually dropped out because I could just see
Oh
it.
yeah.
It's that same thing. You're not giving me any. I can save you a lot of time because I'll nail it. Just leave me alone for a while because I know what this is about. And I don't mean to
Yeah, he
be
was already
arrogant,
starting
but
to sculpt you.
oof. I mean, and just me. And I'm like, I just, and so from those past experiences, I just learned I don't want to drop out. I love to work, but I could tell this is not going to go well. And so I stepped aside.
Look, I don't think that you're being arrogant because there are different modes and ways to do something, and I'm sure there are one or two actors out there who, I mean, obviously this director has been able to have been able to pull that off in the past, who are okay with collaborating that immediately,
Hmm.
but you have to read your surroundings if you're going to be truly successful with the most number of people, and in this instance the greatest volume of actors, to approach them and say, do you mind that I just did that, or what would you like to do? Because that's all it
Hmm.
probably would have taken if he would have been
Yeah.
willing to back down. But
Hmm.
you have to let creative people find their way if you have the bandwidth. If it's crunch time, I would imagine you would say that that's another situation where it's like, look,
Yeah.
I get it, we have to get this shot right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think most people know that it's a collaborative effort. It's a to and fro, and you're hoping the actor brings something to you that you didn't think of. And like I saw some lines in Burn This towards the end that were very emotional, and
Mm.
they worked really well, and because it was a very touching scene. Here's a sad story. I
Okay.
say jokingly. So I worked with Circle Rep in New York when I was fresh out of school and out of the Playhouse, and some great actors there. Lisa Emery, who's out all over the place now. She did some big TV roles. She's an amazing theater actress, and many others. So I got to, on a Friday night, you'd sit in the theater and say, "Okay, you get up and they're just reading a new play." And this is Lanford Wilson's home, and Marshall Mason director. And they just, okay, you read that role, you read that role. And some celebrities were there and some not. There's me. So it was an amazing, amazing fertile ground of people just making it work. And nobody directed it. They just figured they might have given a quick synopsis, and then everybody just reads the thing. And that's really, and you got some talented people there, and it was fantastic. So Lisa and Emery and I did one play there with a group, The Lower Depths, a classic piece, and it was a director's forum as well. So if somebody wanted to direct something, so we did a whole fully memorized production. We ran for a couple of weeks, and Lisa Emery was in this. I'm mentioning her name because later on she heard, I guess, that I had understudied Malkovich, and she was doing Burn This. She replaced the female lead on Broadway when it went there, and then John was gone, and this other actor took over, and she wanted me. And I I was in Vancouver, and I don't know if it was just before the cell phone, believe it or not, or
Oh,
th they couldn't find me, and I was like, "Oh, what?" Do you know how many chances you get to go to Broadway? They're pretty slim. So we would have been great too, because we just had this thing where we just, worked off each other really well. But anyway, that's yeah, showbiz.
can we talk
Yeah.
about finding a character? and I'd like to use Seth as the model, naturally. Um, there are there are, especially in the United States, that there is a and I don't want to say especially in the United States. Throughout history, there are cults with major personalities at the top who suck
Mm,
people in for all
mm,
hosts of reasons. In this case, it's a gold substance called nishta, which is a mind control device. But you have all different kinds of drugs, pheromones, just the allure of someone. Religion, obviously. Was this character in any way intimidating to approach because I grew up with people whose children were lost to cults,
mm,
and that's dark territory for some people. And this certainly doesn't make light of it. I mean, you see this father who's trying to get this guy this his son out of this place. How do you approach a character like that, accepting the fact that it's an alien and that this is fiction, but also knowing that you would have people watching who have lost family to that kind of a person or that kind of a group? Or did that not even occur to you at the time? I can't go there. I'm just going to play this character as truthfully as I can for the time that I'm on the screen. How
mm.
did you approach a character like Seth?
The bottom line is, again, back to the process of acting. It's what am I doing in each scene? Basically, what do I
Okay.
want in each scene? The grand story is somebody else's problem.
Okay.
That's how you know what I mean? Well, and if they take great credit for this amazing story, it's them. I was a vessel within it, I guess, pointing out some things. But I look at each scene. What do I want in that scene? And then I do that. And then what do I want in this scene? What's different? How do I feel about it? That type of thing. So it's really, I don't want to say mechanical, but as an actor, I need to know what do I want and how do I feel about it, and then do that. Um, you, if you have to, though, you can justify. I think you can. I can't today, but I think a person who justifies themselves to carry out a cultish issue or group, they've got these reasons in their head. I know some people who are not very nice people. They're not running a cult, but they're just not nice people, and they have no problem condemning others. So
Right.
yeah, I don't go that philosophical into it in terms of
I
my
see.
my spirit. I'm not that person. I'm just playing this guy for scene by scene by scene. I come down the stairs. There's that guy I got to kill. I just do that, and
Exactly.
you know what I mean. Um, I would have liked to have lived a little longer in the series.
Well, sure. No,
Well, it
you
was
you
funny.
go out dramatically both times.
Well,
So,
and they weren't sure they were going to do that at the beginning. They were telling me, so we're not sure,
uh,
and we're going to do this zap thing where there's a Kate, your chest is going to go down in the ground, but they still weren't sure what they were going to do. I think Seth could have a long life, 'cause,
well,
historically.
absolutely. No, and there would be something rather intimidating about having, someone like that out there who now is aware of the Stargate program and is very, oh, actually, to thinking about that, he's very comfortable hiding out on Earth. He could disappear again for years, but raise,
Yeah.
an army behind the government's back, and no one would ever be the wiser. He's already got technology there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's kind of
And
wild.
yes, and so I think this might be embarrassing, but I only 2 weeks ago saw the Stargate feature film,
For the first time.
and for the first time, and it was a fluke. I'm like scrolling. I'm like, oh, Stargate, let's check that out. So, and I loved it, and I'm now more a fan, I think, than an actor in terms of my zeal for it, and I'm going to continue watching the episodes because the storytelling is brilliant. The characters are brilliant. The acting's brilliant. The new, the series actors coming in were just fantastic. They're all fantastic, and there's a lot of good actors in Vancouver that filled a lot of those roles. But I think that type of a show, off without getting too heavy here, it offers reflections on the past, and the present
Hmm.
and what may happen in the future. Those are can subtly be laid in there, which I think any kind of combat, war combat with characters trying to take over the planet, there's lots of leeway there to touch people and educate people.
That's the thing. I've had many a conversation with the likes of Brad Wright and Robert Cooper and Joseph Malazzi, and they don't look at Stargate like the folks who created Star Trek did, where it was very much the message comes first, we entertain second. It's very much the reverse. And if there is a message, and they often want to have deeper meaning to it, as any artist does, it is not like it is not like on the masthead like in neon signs. It's like we are there to entertain that audience, and we're there to have
Right.
to entertain ourselves and have a good time. And you have to when you have a bunch of snakeheads trying up to blow up the world.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
there's just something about that. I'm curious, how far into the show are you, and what did you think of your Jay Davidson and oh my God, Peter Williams' interpretation of those heavies?
So film and first episode. So I'm just at the beginning.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Yeah, and it was weird. It was good because I'm seeing Teal'c in there. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
is he, So yeah, yeah. I didn't really get far enough to give you a good answer to that. And of course, you don't want to smear something like banner. This is what the philosophy of this is, because that turns people off.
Bunk.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff too. But you want to leave it for interpretation. Maybe people will get it, people won't. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's just a comedy episode, whatever. But at least I think good storytelling has to have some semblance of connecting to people's reality in some way, not necessarily that particular months or whatever, but like love and hatred. They're all iconic sort of messages throughout time.
When you are creating this character on screen, when you create any character on screen, you said you take it scene by scene. Where do, um, where do you begin? Do you begin in trying to find yourself in the character, or do you just start reacting to what's on the page? So, in terms of your process, where do you take off?
Um, so I read it, I look at it, I try to understand where this person is in whatever, I don't mean sci-fi universe, but whatever their
Right.
world is. What do they want? Why do they want it? And then I take it as it comes. How do I feel about it? You know, the emotional quality, which is sometimes very slight, most of the time you don't go over the moon with it, but those issues are pretty much what I need to know, and then I think they fill the gap. For example, let's go back to Melburn Jackson. I mean, he's got a job to do. He's a scientist, and his kid's being a little pest.
Hmm.
Get out of here. Um, and then it goes up a little bit where I'm like, stop this, because he's just
He's
being a little
interfering.
brat. Yeah, I'm being a dad, so yeah. I don't know if that's too simple an answer for you. It's actually a sort
No,
of, I don't say moment to moment, but it's a scene by scene by scene, because I assume the writer is making a tweak and an adjustment in the next scene, or it wouldn't be there. So there's got to be something a little bit different in that next scene.
it makes sense. No, you're looking at this as like, this is not about me. I'm participating in a story, and what do the scenes when they come together equal? And that's a specific
Mm.
formula, and trying to find it, think first and foremost, trying to find that before anything else. You will find truth there, as you were saying earlier. You're not lying you're not lying
And
in that performance.
right, and it's going to change depending on how the other actor comes back at me, because there's usually dialogue betwixt us. You
Hmm.
know, like when those guys first appeared in front of me, and then they're being smarmy. It's like, okay, let's cut you off and let's get back to the business here. Um, but yeah, there's always reaction depending on what's going on with the other character, and how's that going to affect whatever's going on with my character and all that stuff. Yeah.
Is Hannah Kay wants to know, were there any touches that you added to Seth that weren't in the script? And I'm getting a lot of
Mm.
people marking comments here. There was a Cliff Simon whom we lost, as an actor whom we lost a few years ago to an
Mm.
accident.
Hmm.
He was very his gold role was very sensual, and it's just very much like a darker side to, like, how I want to put this, like there was there was a sexual quality to him where he was just magnetic and everyone was completely drawn in, that kind of like found its you could argue that, he I don't think he did, but you could have argued that he could have said, "Oh, I liked what that guy Robert Murray Duncan did there, and I want to do that again." Were there any of those kinds of touches that weren't necessarily on the page that you added to Seth?
I was hoping it would continue because it would continue because I could see that happening. I mean, I have a whole harem of females around me,
Exactly. That's not a
and
coincidence.
right, and
So,
I I- it went there in my head with Amanda, but
hmm
not in that episode because it just wasn't there. But if it had somehow continued in any way, or I take maybe in some cases it takes a little nudge with some writing, but no, definitely. But in terms of any what I did at it, not really. I was trying to make him a little more smarmy, and I'm so powerful. I'm just having such a great time. But but when in the very first take, Mr. Anderson talked to the directors, and I was asked not to smile. So I had
okay.
to keep him pretty. I'm a badass,
Okay.
which was cool.
Yeah, he's
That's
a
fine.
producer. He has that level of pull. So,
Right,
absolutely.
and then there's the vision being relayed to me, which is fine. That's my job.
Absolutely, 100%.
Hmm.
So William
So you're
Aaron
right.
said,
You're.
yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
no,
No, I was going to
please.
say you're right about trying to add something and giving it a character beyond just what's on the surface. And again, this I actually had some of the girls talking to me during the break, and one girl's like, "Oh, I'm a Royal Canadian Mounted Police member." I'm like, "You look like you're 12 years old," and they were very friendly. But in our world, you want to just have an etiquette in the real life, and then in the acting performance, you can go a different direction.
Absolutely. William Aarons wanted to know, even though Seth was an Egyptian god, was there any thought that his personality, or in your mind, in looking at this, was similar to that of the biblical Satan? This is where he said, in your one episode, I see your Seth as very much a template that later became Baal. And Baal, it's this Canaanite god, basically one of the original Satans. There was a lot of similarity there, or was it more of, look, we're just playing this guy for all he's worth in every scene, because this is a
No,
chance to create something interesting.
yeah, no, I agree with him. I would definitely wanted to give it that, like right now, curses want to come out of my mouth, but no, I wanted to give him that just raw evil, like and then again, if there were more storyline, then add some sort of other nuance to it. But yeah, definitely, pure evil's good.
Jacob wants to know. We are all big fans of Mama Knox and Follow the Yellow Gate Road. Can you tell us about that event and your experience? I'm
Uh,
I don't know if I can say anything. I may be involved in a future one. So
I understand.
please
I
tell me what to
understand.
expect.
Yeah, it was great. Everybody there is super. It's not one of the behemoth events, so it was more personal, and we had a great time. You just got to know people, and we do the lunches, and I feel like I need to be better at those sometime. I was very yeah, it was very moving. I've made some friendships with people that I still text every now and then, or they get in touch with me, and you will have a great time. It's more homegrown. The events are organized. It's fun. The people that go to them, of course, are always amazing. And that's the thing that makes the whole thing worthwhile. It's so much fun.
Have you done a
So
Gatecon?
um
That's the
was
one
I
out of
did
Vancouver.
yes, and the
Okay.
very first thing I ever did was in England.
That was
They called
probably the
Chevron.
one GateCon that was in the U, or it may not have been. There was, okay, so there was one in England that you had done.
Yeah, that was the first one that I'd ever gone to. That was
Okay.
quite a while. And then I did one in Vancouver a couple of years ago, a few years ago,
Okay. Is it
which was
uh,
also fun.
there is something to be said for these lower key, lower head count, like you said, homegrown events that are just a more casual pace, that are specifically designed for one chunk of it is for, or one reason of it is to accommodate people who can't deal with large crowds for whatever reason, either
Mm,
physically or mentally. And there's something kind of boutique is not the right word, but something really, really personal and sincere about it, and kind of like on the like you are paying for like a regular ticket price, but you have a smaller group of talent, and the guests get more time with one another and with the whole experience. That's rewarding.
yes, and I had no idea of that personal engagement that took place until I went to one, and then what my role was in that. In one particular one, there were two men. They were dressed in like Scottish regalia, what I would call Scott, kilts and
Yeah.
things. And I was in the Canadian Governor General's foot guard back in the day, so I like talking to anybody that looks like they're from a military background and showing my appreciation. And
Hmm.
these guys were I won't say names 'cause I don't remember
Yeah.
technically, but they had been through some things in combat, and they were from the U.S. and they were there to get out of their head, basically, and I find that very moving. And I wanted to spend more time with them, but I couldn't find them, because I'd like to hear more about their stories. And there's a lot of that business going on in those breakfasts and things like that. And I had no idea that that's what took place in the cons. That people
I
are there to
see.
kind of talk and connect and embrace each other.
Is that what you were alluding to in terms of like wishing that you could have tweaked the experience a little bit more, having a little bit more forethought into what you were getting
Yes,
into? Okay.
yes, yeah, and
Y-
or sometimes having more time with people, because you're sort of scheduled. But yeah.
That's the thing, we're never allowed instant replay. It may be great for the Olympics and for touchdowns.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I there have been instances in doing this where I have gotten off the phone and or the Zoom and been like, I didn't ask the one thing that I wanted to ask, or it didn't occur to me at the time, and uh, I've lost that person. They died.
Mm, mm,
And that answer is forever locked away from fans because it's something that I think that fans would want to have. And it's similar in that where you make a connection with a human being, and as all of us have done at one point or another, and then they become inaccessible to us either by it's like I met them at this one thing, I didn't get any contact information, I'll never see them again. At a certain point, we just have to um, accept that the time that we have with someone, maybe that was enough. In
mm.
some cases, like in this particular situation, I would I very much have wanted to go and spend more time with them and really get to take them out to the bar in the hotel or something, get their story, but
Mm.
we only have the time that we're given with people, and then that's it.
Yes, yes, and that is like life, isn't it? Yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah. But again, just I'm just so stunned that that is such a strong foundation and almost a significant purpose for doing these for both fans and the actors. That's impressive. It's kind of rare.
one of the things that always surprises people, I think the most, it certainly surprised me, is that the reason for someone to go to a Stargate event like this is largely to get a few moments with someone that they've known through the television, in terms of an autograph and a photo, but they come back generally because of the people that they've found there in the process. And
Mm,
that is the
yes.
glory of Stargate conventions and sci-fi conventions, and just gathering together at these kinds of fan events where you find a second family if you're
Hmm.
lucky, because not everyone does. And you have a place that you can come back to that you can also call home, other than just your home.
Mm, yeah. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's a very, very rich, 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 rich scenario. And again, try to name something else that tries to bring that connection together and support.
Absolutely. TSG
Mhm.
2167, thank you for doing this episode. Seth has looked like he hasn't aged a day.
Good.
What is your workout regimen? Since I last saw you, I run a 5K on one day, and then the next day I pump iron. What's your story?
Well, I haven't been working out. I used to. I haven't been doing. I want to get back to that.
Well,
Honestly,
you
I
look
think
like
it's
you do.
I think it's what we eat. I
Yes,
do.
that's true.
I knew someone that had a heart condition. I don't, but they went keto, and there's a lot of things that make sense there. Basically, staying away from sugar and processed foods,
Hmm.
and that's difficult to do in our world. Trying to find real food. So, but that's
Ironically.
good. And fasting every now and then is not a bad thing to do.
Hmm.
Let your body cleanse itself and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not obsessed with any of it. I still like have an ice cream cone and all that. I go off
Yeah.
the model, but at least that gave me an objective in terms of just eating everything, having, and I, try to do 2 meals a day, not three, those kinds of things. Just little
Hmm.
things that I don't miss. And I think it helps. I'm, as you get on, you're looking around and sometimes you lose a friend or two and you're like, I think I'll just take care of
Exactly.
myself.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
as we get older and we see, the people who brought us into the world and the way that they go, it's like, well, in some cases at least, it's like I don't want that to happen to me. So whatever they did, I'm not doing it. So I
Right.
think that's one of the
Yes.
benefits of having, if we're fortunate, us going after the people who brought us into the world. It's horrible on us, but it's just the way that it's supposed to. It's the way that it's supposed to be. It's the way that
Yes.
the nature takes its course. Uh,
Hmm.
Karen 156. Going back to the earlier conversation, do you ever get reference lines or voices that a director will show you, or have you ever had where it's like, okay, this is kind of the person, this is the kind of the sound that I'm going for, this is like the target area that I want you to land? Is that a situation that you've ever encountered, and what is the uh, protocol in that kind of a situation as an actor?
Mm. I haven't really,
Okay.
and if they did, I would try what they're asking me to do.
Okay.
And again, I can understand why that becomes kind of like, oh, let me find my own way. But
Exactly.
but yeah, it hasn't really happened to me to get sort of give me that type of a specific instruction. But I would try it. I would try it and see how they feel about it and see maybe it makes something change in me that is better. I don't know. Yeah.
What are you working on these days? Is there anything that you can recommend that we check you out in? And I'm curious if you're going to continue to watch Stargate and keep
I am
going.
going to continue. I want, not even, not even have because I had been involved, but just because I think it's an amazing piece of work, and I want to see more of it. And so this kind of leverages what you just asked me. I work with a group here of writers and actors, and for instance, the person that headed this group is called Bobby Moresco. He directed Million Dollar Baby and wrote it and all these
Okay.
wonderful films. And he just got back from Italy. They're doing the Maserati story. And just to tell you a
Wow.
little bit about sort of sort of why somebody does something, he was particularly excited about it. He had done the Lamborghini story, and the Italians can you come back and do the Maserati story? So he did. But the what was really interesting to him was that the Maserati brothers were building their car at as World War II was starting to rise and Mussolini was came into power. So through the brothers' differing opinions about this person, he's reflecting his point of view about that and the world in terms of,
Wow. Both
yeah.
sides.
Yes. So, and
Wow.
that, it's not just about nuts and bolts and making a car. So, he's going for the human factor in there and using it to perhaps express a point of view that some people might benefit from. Um, so, in terms of what I'm doing, I'm writing with them. I'm doing some acting within them. There seems to be a lot of change going on in Hollywood, with all these mergers and stuff like that. I actually want to go and when I left Vancouver, I went back to New York City, and I was there for 9/11,
Oh
and
boy.
there are certain memories I have that I'm trying to put into a story. The story is not about 9/11, but it takes place during 9/11, or not, sorry, 9/11 takes place within the time of my story. And I'm trying, screenwriting is not easy. Otherwise, there'd be a billion great films out there. But I'm sort of learning from these people. I'm trying to get this film done and take it from there. And but physically, I wasn't physically, uh, objectively, I'm thinking of trying to go to spend some time in Toronto and audition for some things there. There's something about coming into a new town where you have some experience, and it's like, well, let's get, see what this person can do. I don't know. The industry here seems to be, kind of clunking along. It doesn't seem to be that busy. So I'd like to just go
Where
see
is
what's
it that you are
happening in
right now?
Toronto. I'm
Oh,
in
you mean
LA.
LA? That's what I thought.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So I thought I'd go check
Um,
out Toronto.
I was shocked that that Netflix ultimately withdrew, and Paramount was the one that got the library. I
Yeah,
really didn't expect that happening.
I have a friend who's one of the top execs at Netflix. No, sorry, I have a friend whose son is one of
Okay.
the top execs at and he when he was hired about I don't, 4 years 4 or 5 years ago, he was with another studio, and they pulled him over to Netflix. And he Netflix used to be a company where you have a really good film idea, and if they believe that, they give you the money and they leave you alone, and
Exactly.
they check in to make sure,
Of course.
and schedule's going to hit and stuff. Now what they do is they try to produce everything themselves. They try to finance and get their own people to direct it and all this kind of stuff. They make all those decisions. So they're taking away a very strong creative energy. And particularly, let's say animation. They built their own animation studio. Now, it takes 4 years to make a film. And how many years is it going to sit dormant while you figure out what next film you want to make? So anyway, they changed their model from how they were in the beginning when they were very successful, and they're spending too much money. So his son, at
Mm,
the point where he was this friend's son, when he was hired, he basically had to go down to the big sort of meeting they were having in Santa Monica, and basically say 50% of you suits have got to go because it's producer heavy. And before there was none. There was just like, we're going to give you the money, make this film. And then when you build a studio, that's a huge expense, and you got to keep stuff going every year, right? Like you can't sit 4 years, 3 years waiting for the next to decide what next animated film. So they made a lot of bad choices because too much money. And I don't know who's at the top, but that's their responsibility to shred it. So yeah, I just think there's so much hocus pocus going on right now in Hollywood. I don't know. Nobody's banging my door down.
well, I mean, I I would I don't know about Netflix, man. I mean, it may not be the case now, but it certainly was. No eye contact with the opposite sex for more than 3 or 4 seconds. I mean, it's like little things like that. It's like, I'm sorry, but in a creative space, I can't work like that. That is not going to happen. So it's just I understand
If
the why the policy exists, and also no, come on.
and I'm not a pro at any of this stuff, but if a particular foreign country uh, is running the show, you're going
Right.
to have their ethics. So you're not going to see a woman in a short skirt. There's going to be a reverse of some of the freedoms that, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of storytelling, which I think
Yeah.
can have a strong influence on people. So
Absolutely. And
who
you are a
knows?
guest of that nation that's running that show. And that's in that specific circumstance, that would make sense because it's like you're in someone else's house. You take your shoes off, or you eat the meal that's presented to you, even though there's just certain things that make sense in that circumstance rather than this blanket overarching, this is the policy. So
Yeah,
it's an
yeah.
interesting world that we live in now, Robert.
It is. It
Let's go
is.
back to
It
the old
is.
Seth days. Let's reboot
Well,
Stargate at season 2.
yeah, and
Uh,
in a way that I think that's why my coming into Stargate, watching the series at this point, is really refreshing because it is kind of reflecting certain issues, and that's why,
of
wow, these guys are
course.
brilliant, really brilliant.
What do you think that the fourth Stargate series needs to do? I know that you're essentially, in terms of a viewer, still very much a Stargate virgin, but what do you think in terms of your sensibilities, in terms of what it is that you like to consume and watch? Um, with television and film now, what do you think the fourth series needs to do to be successful?
Well, I think pretty much more of the same, but keep, like all good storytelling, have some relevance in terms of the characters' needs, wants, and desires and relationships between them. And then what's going on, you don't want to get too heavy into having a clear metaphor for what is particularly happening
Sure.
in this particular month in the planet, on the real planet. But I think, and the charm and the humor that was in there, I mean, just making things real in a fictional sort of way, um,
Absolutely.
characters that care about each other, having an objective, a goal, trying to accomplish things, and the various conflicts that happen within them. That's the whole deal.
And one of the great things about Stargate that I hope that you are going to see and get excited about is that uh, obviously it's in the now, but also there is enough historical content on it that you want to keep your phone handy because occasionally you're going to want to pause and wiki something and say, okay, I've heard about this. What is this? So that you
Mm,
can delve into it and it can enhance the experience as you watch because they're pulling
hmm.
stuff from history. Not just
Yeah.
Egyptian but also eventually Arthurian mythology. And there's a lot of stuff to pull from that you can you can you can go to the library and get books off the shelf that will fill in context for what Stargate was trying to do with certain historical
Mm.
characters in their own spin on things.
That's actually a big challenge too, right? Because there's a whole world that's already been set, and a lot of the fans know it. But coming in, if they're saying they're going to be continuing from there, there's people going to have to catch up. Um,
That's one of the
that's
nice
an
things about
interesting
there being a
challenge.
15-year time gap because Martin Garrow can set the word. I keep saying, I heard you say set, and I see set. It's like that's yes, it was another name for Seth, but keep going.
Yeah.
He can set the tone of his show in the soft reboot that he's wanting to tell, but it will be completely couched in the universe that existed before, like Jurassic World came after Jurassic Park. And that's
Mm,
what's brilliant about doing it now is we've had plenty of time that has passed so he can tell the story that he wants to tell and bring in whatever elements from the past that he wants to, so long
mm,
as he doesn't step on any of the existing pieces in terms of like the fundamental method of how the Stargate works and this and that. And he won't because he wrote it. He already
mm.
knows it. So there's
Do,
I'm excited. Most of us are.
do you have an opinion as to why now, or why it took this much time?
I know why it took so much time. My opinion is that it was just a question of when they were going to bring it back. I can sit here and go through specific details with you on how the franchise was about to restart at least four times and got canceled from the writer strike,
Mm,
COVID. Brad Wright had a version that was ready, and then it was being considered, and then there's another event that I'm missing that happened, and Stargate's always been the first blade of grass to get cut by the lawnmower of something larger happening over the top of it,
yeah.
to the point where a lot of these folks were like, I think I'm just done. And the
Mm,
fact of the matter is, even folks like Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich, who wanted to do a second and third Stargate feature, when the end comes over the screen at the end of that feature film, that is not the end. That is the end of
right.
what they believed was part one. And then MGM decided to take it into another direction and do a TV series on it. At that point, they were like, even they put in the DVD commentary, we have no connection with the television series at all. Those guys are executive producers on this one, so it's
Mm,
almost like everyone is getting back together and in a room
right.
where this large group of people has never been in this room before with all of these folks. So who knows what's going to happen if this one is
And
successful, if this first season is successful.
and I understand in England.
It's shooting in London.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Mostly,
cool.
it's gonna be filming around the world, but the base is in London. Yeah, it's not going to be Vancouver or, as far as I know, LA. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
it's going to be wild. Yeah,
The British fans are going to love it because they've definitely been pretty dedicated. They've been
I've
out
been
there.
getting calls left and right. Get me onto this set. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
No, I want a
All right.
cameo. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Robert, this has been great. Thank you so much for taking time to sit down and talk. And I really appreciate your sincere approach with me today about tackling some of these more fundamental issues that your performance grows out of into the character, because that meant a lot. I wasn't expecting that, and I really appreciate that you did that.
Mm, yeah, sure. And yeah, if ever I'm doing some work, I'll let you know, and be great to have you out to a stage production or something like that.
Please
Theater
be my
gig.
guest. Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
going out Gildert Jackson outside of Irvine. He's doing a production of The Shark is Broken, which was based on Jaws.
Oh,
So I'm going out next
yes.
week to take care of that. So it's
Oh, cool. That'll
absolutely,
be fun.
I'm more than willing. Thank you so much for your time, sir. It really means a lot to have you back.
Thanks, David. It's been great to talk to you again. It's an exciting time for Stargate again.
And for you, 100%. Please let me know when you're a few seasons in, and we'll have you back on, because there are a number of actors that I keep track of who have become Stargate fans since. And when they get a little bit into the weeds of it and really start to really truly fall in love with it, I have them back
Right.
on to get their temperature as fans, and we talk about the characters. So that, please email me.
Yeah, cool. Definitely. All right,
All
David.
right,
Thank
sir.
you.
You be well, sir. I'm going
Okay.
to wrap up the show on this side.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. That's Robert Murray Duncan, Dr. Melburn Jackson, and our God Seth. My name is David Reed. You're watching the Stargate Oral History Project. If you enjoy the show, this one, if you enjoy, well, no, yeah, this one. If you enjoy Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, click that like button. It does make a difference with the show and will continue to help us grow. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. And if you click the bell icon, it will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And this clips from this episode will be released over the course of the next few weeks on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. I do not do this show in a vacuum. No man rose alone. And the fact of the matter is that I have a brilliant team of people who help me pull this off week after week. And I could not have done this one without Anthony and Lockwatcher and Jacob Oleash. These people make the show possible, and it means the world to me that they back me up on this one. Thank you, Anthony, as well, for doing the chapter time codes for this episode. We have director David Warry Smith tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific time on the 3rd of March. Tomorrow, he did Pretense. He did There Before the Grace of God. He did The Fifth Race. And I am thrilled to sit down with him to talk about these episodes in broader detail, because he did certainly more than that, but those are certainly 3 that we're going to pick for tomorrow, because these are very important episodes to the fabric of the canon, and we're gonna pick them apart a little bit and see what's under the hood of this classic car, and see what the designer had in mind when he put everything onto film. That's what we've got for you in this episode. If you want to see more episodes that are coming down the pipe, and there's a few of them, visit dialthegate.com for that information. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you on the other side.